Pretty much every farmer is familiar with how to make cash sales to your elevator, and we understand setting that price. And some of us are knowledgeable about how to hedge your price risk using futures and options, or like on the board type of trading. But there's actually a third path. And I want to tell you about when you sell your grain through Farmer's Keeper, how you can get the benefits of not having to hedge your grain price using margin when you sell to the elevator, but then how you can also have the flexibility to trade how you want and to be able to unwind that position and then set your basis wherever the best elevator is when you do things on futures and options. Because we're a middle path there that's probably a good fit for some of your grain. What's important is we want every farmer to know what percent of your grain is that right portion that you might want to sell it through Farmer's Keeper, so that you can get the best basis available when you're ready to set that basis without locking it into a grain elevator yet. And then also be able to set your futures price without having to carry the margin on your own, because we're using the same clearing firm partners that the grain elevators use. We're just not tying your delivery into a direct physical delivery location. That way, later on, after you've set futures probably months ahead of time, if sometimes years ahead of time, you can actually choose whoever's got the best basis in your area. So the main thing is, if you deliver to more than one grain elevator, and when you see those cash or basis bids between the different elevators in your area, if you see more than a 10 or 15 cent difference from time to time between what they're all bidding, those are probably bushels that it makes sense to sell through Farmer's Keeper. And I'll tell you more about that later on in this video, but let's talk about what bushels don't make sense to sell through Farmer's Keeper. So most of us have a portion of bushels in a certain field that might be right outside of town, right near the co-op, and let's say you're growing soybeans on that field that year. So in that case, you probably don't have the storage for those beans. You have to get them off your hands because you're gonna be storing some corn, and you just want to get those bushels to town. It doesn't really even matter to you what the basis price is. You've just got to get those off your hands really quickly. So in those cases where you've got bushels that you know where those bushels are gonna go, it probably makes sense and is cheaper to go directly to the elevator and just do any type of grain pricing tool you can there, and either take your cash price or set your basis later on because you know those bushels are going there. Some of our customers, that's a really big portion of your bushels. For instance, in an area like Central Illinois, you might have one co-op that's right next to you in town that you know you're delivering almost all of your bushels to. That's probably not the best fit for your bushels to sell through Farmer's Keeper using a grain pricing tool. But if you're in a more drastic example, like our customers up in the Dakotas, they're oftentimes delivering like 75 to 100 miles away to different elevators, and they're delivering to multiple different elevators. Sometimes they've got different markets for where that grain's going, like a feeder who's worried about livestock and prices, or an ethanol plant that's worried about the price of oil, or a local merchandiser that's buying and selling grain and putting it on the rail up there. So our customers in the Dakotas, they see something like a 50 cent to $1 difference between each of the elevators that they deliver to when they're setting basis. Man, if you fall into that category, again, anything above 10 or 15 cents on your basis between the elevators you deliver to, if you use any of our grain pricing tools, you can set your futures ahead of time, however you want, on whatever contract month you want, and then you can deliver to whoever's got the best bid. Because we all know if you sell a good amount of your grain once you know you've got a good crop, let's say in right after planting, right? May or June, when a lot of guys make sales. You're setting your futures price, however you're doing that early on in the season. And then we don't see people set their basis with us on those typically until later on in the year, because they want to keep their options open to see how basis is going to develop at the elevator they deliver to or across the different elevators that they sell to. Placing your futures hedge through any grain pricing tool of Farmer's Keeper means you can reserve your futures price without worrying about a margin call. But then on the other hand, you can choose to deliver those bushels in whatever segments you want to whatever grain elevator you want. So if you have 50,000 bushels of corn on different HTAs through Farmer's Keeper, you don't have to deliver all those bushels in one shot to one elevator. You can split them up throughout the year and even roll those bushels forward to another contract month if you're looking to capture a carry in the market, or you just can't haul all the grain to town at the time that you want to do it. You've got that ultimate flexibility there. That kind of contrasts with a different example that we see of where there's not a fit, again, for selling your grain through Farmer's Keeper. And that's for a lot of the producers who are around, let's say, like the St. Louis market. And in St. Louis, there's a big draw for your grain on the river. And all the ABCDs, you can name them yourself, they've got their facilities right there on the river. They're giving away 2-cent HTAs, or in some cases, free HTAs to farmers. And all their basis tends to be pretty much exactly the same. In those cases, by just picking one of those elevators and doing your hedges directly through them, you're not really giving up very much in your basis flexibility by doing that, because you know, for the most part, there's going to be less than about a 10-cent difference between those elevators in their basis bids later on. So you might as well go direct for them for that, get a much cheaper HTA, and just get that done, right? So it's about knowing when to use those different situations and what portion of your grain to deliver. But there's another portion of pricing your grain that we've left out, and that's the futures and options side of things. We estimate that something like 15 to 20% of farmers have some type of an active hedge account where they can go on the board or on paper and trade paper contracts of corn, soybeans, and wheat. And there's a really good time and a place to do that as well. We see a lot of producers that want to hedge their price risk, but are afraid to sell physical early on because they're just not sure either what they're going to plant, or they're in an area where they might be like in western Kansas or western Nebraska, where they're very drought prone and they're not sure what they're going to produce as a crop. So earlier on in the year, they may want to take on that extra risk of selling futures or doing things on margin so that they can not be committed to physical that they might not have, right? That's a different segment of how to hedge that. So we've got bushels that you know are going to a certain elevator that you should do directly through that elevator. We've got production that you're not sure about, that you're not sure that you're going to plant, or you're not sure that you're going to have, that you probably should take a look at least, because this is not a trade recommendation and we don't trade in futures and options, but you should at least look at what are your options on not committing physical and doing it on the board. But then there's that third path of doing it through Farmer's Keeper. And you can kind of get the best of both worlds. Again, if you see more than 10 or 15 cents difference in the cash prices from the elevators that you deliver to, and you don't want to carry the hedge on your bushels. Because what you can do is you can set the futures price on your grain using any one of our grain pricing tools, which, by the way, we did a webinar on explaining HTAs, min-maxes, average price contracts, accumulators, all that stuff, and how and when to use them. It's a really good video. You should definitely check it out to learn more about it. It's pretty much universal information that you can use at any elevator you sell grain to, not just doing stuff through Farmer's Keeper. When you sell your futures through Farmer's Keeper using those grain pricing tools, though, we're carrying the hedge, again, with the same clearing firm partners that the elevators use. But later on, when you go to set basis on those bushels, you're not committed to an elevator, or you don't have to pay a flex fee to go deliver to someone else. So you can then, later on, when you go to set basis, you can take a look, and we are happy to help you search your local market as well, and you can see who's got the best bid at that time. Because if you do deliver to a feedlot sometimes, and an ethanol plant, and some type of a grain merchandiser that buys and sells grain on the river or on the rail, what you can do is you never know whether the ethanol market's going to be hot, or livestock's going to be hot, or export trade is going to be really hot at that point. And you can make sure at that time, you can use any one of your grain contracts that you have through us and commit those bushels to anywhere in any location that you want to deliver to. And that also includes getting your push. A lot of the producers we work with get a push above the posted basis bid at their local elevators because they either have a really good relationship there or they sell a lot of bushels to those places. And you're able to apply that to the futures price that you've already set with Farmer's Keeper. Plus, if a larger portion of your bushels fall into that category of, I don't want to put up the hedge for it, and I don't know exactly what elevator I'm going to deliver to, when you price them through Farmer's Keeper, you've got all those bushels in one place and all those contracts in one place with your single point of contact on our team that you work with every day. And it's easier for a lot of our customers to keep all of those contracts straight in one place rather than having some HTAs at this elevator, an accumulator over here, maybe a basis contract or a cash contract at another elevator. It's just more centralized and easier for you to do that. So for you and your farm, what you've got to determine is what percent of my grain makes sense that I know it's going to this elevator and I want to commit a futures price and a cash price directly through them. Then what percent of my production might I want to look at hedging on the board so that I can have flexibility outside of what my physical production is going to be and I'm okay with taking on that margin risk with. But then for that other large portion of your bushels potentially, you can take a look and see, these are bushels that I'm not sure where they're going to go. I'm not sure what month I'm going to deliver them on, but I do want to get some price protection on the future side of that transaction. So maybe I want to go to Farmer's Keeper, place that hedge using any grain pricing tool, and then not have to worry about margin calls and set my basis wherever I want to later on down the line. It's a really simple way to think about how and what buckets your different sales fall into throughout the year. If you understand how your percentages of what grain you sell fall into those three categories, you're going to be able to be a lot more effective with your risk management and the ultimate cash prices that you get on your grain. So if you're interested in learning more about this and talking with someone on our team about where exactly that fit is for you, put your information in our website. Go to www.farmerskeeper.org. Put your information into our contact card there, and someone from our team will reach out and learn more about you and your farm, your risk tolerance, how you sell grain, what elevators you deliver to, and figure out what is that percentage of your bushels that might make sense to sell through Farmer's Keeper. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Grain pricing tools, no margin, play the basis. Farmer's Keeper. Click the link below to supercharge your grain marketing.